I was having coffee with a friend not long ago. He was telling me about this idea he had, a startup he wanted to launch, a project he was really passionate about. But then he said, I haven't told anyone yet. I'm just keeping my head down and working. And I just nodded and smiled because in that moment, I realized something. We live in a world that is addicted to noise. We post every achievement. We share every opinion. We document every step, not because we need to, but because we want validation. We want applause. We want the world to know we're doing something, even if we haven't done it yet. But what if we didn't? What if we focused only on ourselves, our growth, our work, our process, and stayed silent? See, when we stop announcing and start building, something magical happens. The energy we used to spend explaining, we now spend executing. The attention we craved from others, we redirect it inward into self-awareness, discipline, and clarity. The best people I've ever met, leaders, creators, thinkers, they have this calm about them. They're not in a hurry to prove themselves. They're in no rush to broadcast their progress. Why? Because they trust the process. I'm not saying isolate yourself. I'm not saying never share. What I am saying is this: when your focus is truly on your craft, you don't need the noise. When you're dialed into your purpose, silence isn't uncomfortable, it's powerful. And when you grow for you, not for them, the results speak louder than words ever could. So focus on yourself, stay silent, let your work speak for you, because the loudest one in the room is rarely the one who actually has it figured out. Thank you. We live in a time where silence makes people uncomfortable. If we're not posting, sharing, tweeting, or updating, it's almost as if we don't exist. There's this quiet pressure to always be seen doing something, to constantly show progress, success, or at the very least movement. And that pressure, it's subtle, but it's strong. It pushes us to talk about the things we plan to do before we've even taken the first real step toward doing them. This addiction to noise, to the constant stream of content, opinions, announcements, and highlights, it's not just a societal habit. It's a coping mechanism. We post our dreams not just to inspire others, but often to receive validation that we're on the right path. We look to the likes, the comments, the affirmations as fuel. And it feels good, doesn't it? That little boost of dopamine when someone says, you've got this, or can't wait to see where this goes. The problem is that kind of fuel doesn't last. It burns fast, and then we're left needing more. And worse, sometimes, we mistake the reaction to the announcement for the success of the achievement. We say we're going to write a book, and the excitement people give us feels like we've already written it, but we haven't. We've just talked about it. We've fed the ego before we fed the work. And when that initial excitement fades, when the applause quiets down, the reality of the work remains and is often harder to face once we've already made noise about it. The irony is that the more we talk about what we're going to do, the less likely we are to follow through, not because we're not capable, but because we've already received the reward that our brain was craving. Recognition, approval, that false sense of completion, and so the motivation to actually finish the job diminishes. We become addicted to sharing the idea rather than building the reality. But this isn't about blaming social media or saying we should never talk about our goals. It's deeper than that. It's about noticing what drives us to speak in the first place. Are we sharing to connect or to be validated? Are we announcing because it's a meaningful moment or because we're insecure and need proof that we matter? When we become aware of this tendency, this craving for attention, we begin to shift. We start to see the value in the quiet, in the private moments of growth, in doing the work without needing to be seen doing it, because that's where real transformation happens. That's where character is built. That's where focus becomes sharp and discipline becomes real. Focusing on yourself and staying silent doesn't mean hiding. It means protecting your energy. It means reserving your strength for the work that actually moves the needle. It means trusting that you don't need an audience to validate your path. You just need a reason, a why, and the courage to follow it quietly, relentlessly, and unapologetically. In a world where everyone is talking, choosing silence is not weakness, it's strength, it's clarity, and it's the sign of someone who knows that real progress isn't always loud, it just is. Talking takes energy. So does explaining yourself, defending your decisions, or constantly keeping people updated on what you're working on. It might not seem like a big deal in the moment, just a quick post, a conversation, a bit of sharing, but over time, all of that communication adds up. It starts to drain energy you could have used to build, to create, to actually do the thing you're talking about. And that's the catch. We live in a culture where talking about your goals is almost expected, as if sharing them makes them more real. And to some degree, it does feel that way. But feelings can be misleading. Announcing that you're working on something can give you the illusion of progress. It feels productive. People cheer you on, they get excited with you, and for a moment it's validating. You feel seen. You feel like you're already halfway there, but nothing's actually happened yet. Meanwhile, every ounce of energy spent crafting updates or explaining your vision to others is energy taken away from doing the hard, boring, gritty work behind the scenes. The kind of work that doesn't get likes or comments. The real progress often isn't glamorous. It's hours of trial and error, late nights of frustration, quiet breakthroughs that don't need to be broadcast. And when you're locked into that process, truly immersed, there isn't much time or desire to narrate it. You're too busy actually doing it. Think about the people who've made real impact, the inventors, the builders, the artists, the leaders. Many of them worked in obscurity long before anyone knew their names. They weren't wasting energy trying to convince the world that they were onto something. They were using every bit of that energy to build something worth noticing later. They understood that the power is in the work itself, not in the conversation around it. There's also another layer to this. When you talk too much about your plans, you open the door to too many outside voices. Everyone has an opinion. Some will support you, sure, but others will project their fears, their doubts, their expectations onto you, and that noise can throw you off course. Suddenly, you're spending more time managing perceptions than managing progress. You're adjusting your vision to keep people happy or to make it more marketable, more impressive, instead of keeping it aligned with your purpose. The truth is, explaining takes you out of flow. It forces you into performance mode, always thinking about how things look rather than how they are. And that mindset shift is subtle but dangerous. Because when you're more concerned with how you're being perceived, you stop trusting yourself. You second guess your instincts, you hesitate. But when you stop explaining and start building, something shifts. You reclaim your time, you protect your focus, you pour everything into the task at hand, and the task gives back. The more you invest in it, the more momentum you gain. You find rhythm, confidence, clarity, and without even realizing it, you start to separate yourself from the noise, not by declaring your greatness, but by quietly becoming it. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask yourself, is this conversation fueling my progress, or is it just a distraction? Is this explanation necessary, or am I leaking energy? Because every time you choose action over explanation, you move a little closer to mastery. And in the end, it's not the people who talk the most who built the most. It's the ones who kept their heads down, stayed focused, and let their results do all the talking. Progress doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's invisible to everyone else. It doesn't show up on social media. It doesn't get a round of applause. And it certainly doesn't come with instant rewards. But that doesn't mean it isn't real. Silent progress, the kind you make when no one is watching, when you're just putting in the reps day after day, is still progress. In fact, it's often the most powerful kind. The world tends to reward loudness. We celebrate big wins, dramatic transformations, public achievements. And that's understandable. Those moments are exciting. They're easy to notice. But what we don't see are the quiet hours that led up to them, the small choices, the consistent efforts, the internal battles. We forget that the big results are just the tip of the iceberg. What's underneath, the foundation, is built in silence. It's in the early mornings when you show up for yourself even when you don't feel like it. It's in the countless drafts you never post, the workouts no one sees, the skills you refine behind closed doors. That's silent progress. It's slow, it's steady, and it requires a kind of patience that goes against everything our instant gratification culture teaches us. The truth is, silent progress is where resilience is built, when no one's watching and there's no external motivation. All you have is your why. And when you keep going anyway, that's when you become unshakable. That's when discipline is forged, not through performance, but through perseverance. There's also a deep kind of freedom that comes from working in silence. You're not performing for anyone. You're not adjusting your process to meet expectations. You're just focused on the work, on improving, on becoming better than you were yesterday. That focus creates flow. It creates momentum. And over time, It compounds in ways you don't even realize until suddenly you changed not in one big leap, but in 1,000 quiet steps. And maybe the most beautiful part, silent progress doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need applause to keep going. It doesn't pause for approval. It just is. It's grounded in something deeper than attention. It's grounded in purpose. But that's also what makes it hard. Because we've been conditioned to expect validation as a sign of success. When no one's cheering us on, it's easy to question if we're on the right path. It's easy to feel like we're being left behind while everyone else is sprinting ahead. But appearances are deceiving. Just because something is loud doesn't mean it's sustainable. And just because something is quiet doesn't mean it isn't growing. The seed that grows into the tallest tree spends a long time underground first. No one sees it, no one claps for it, but that doesn't stop it from growing. That's what silent progress is. It's underground work, root work, the kind that lasts. So if you're in a season where it feels like no one sees you, keep going. If you're building something and no one's acknowledging it yet, keep going. If you're showing up every day and it feels like nothing is happening, something is, trust that, respect that, because the progress that matters most isn't always the kind you can measure right away. It's the kind that changes you. It's the kind that prepares you for the moment when everything does come together. And you're finally ready, not because you made noise, but because you stayed committed. Silent progress may not get attention, but it gets results. And in the end, that's what counts. There's something quietly powerful about people who don't feel the need to announce themselves. They walk into a room and don't have to prove anything. They're not competing for attention. They're not desperate to be seen or heard. They just are. And you can feel it. That presence, calm, focused, grounded. It says more than words ever could. That's the kind of energy that comes from inner certainty. And that kind of energy doesn't make noise, it makes impact. The people who are the most focused, the most centered, the most capable, they're rarely the ones shouting the loudest. In fact, the ones who really have it figured out tend to say less. They listen more, they observe, they ask better questions. They're not trying to prove they're smart, they're trying to understand. They're not performing for the crowd, they're focused on the mission. When you're truly invested in growth, you stop needing external validation. You're not motivated by applause, you're motivated by alignment. By becoming the kind of person who doesn't just talk about values and vision, but lives them quietly and consistently. And that kind of consistency creates trust, both within yourself and with others. There's a confidence that comes from knowing you're doing the work even if no one sees it. You're not bluffing, you're not pretending, you're building something real, something that doesn't need to be hyped up because it holds weight on its own. That's why the calm ones stand out, not because they're flashy, but because they're solid. You can feel the difference between someone who's talking a big game and someone who's walking it, even if they never say a word about it. Stillness in a noisy world is magnetic. Calm in a world addicted to speed and spectacle is a kind of rebellion, but it's also a sign of deep focus. When you're dialed into what matters most, everything else fades into the background. You stop reacting to every opinion, every trend, every distraction. You start moving with intention. You start choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. This doesn't mean you're detached or cold. In fact, people with this quiet confidence are often the most generous and thoughtful, but they're grounded. They don't over-explain themselves. They're not trying to win arguments or convince people of their worth. They know who they are, and that kind of self-awareness frees up so much space for actual growth. Compare that to someone who constantly needs to be heard, seen, validated. It's exhausting. Not just for them, but for everyone around them. They're driven by insecurity, by the fear of not being enough, so they make noise to fill the silence. But the calm ones, they've already made peace with the silence. They've learned to thrive in it. The irony is that when you stop needing to be seen, people start noticing you more. Not because you're demanding attention, but because you're earning respect. And respect runs deeper than attention. Attention is fleeting, respect endures. So if you find yourself surrounded by noise, by pressure to speak up, to be seen, to prove yourself, pause, check in with yourself, ask, what's actually driving me right now? Am I reacting or am I responding? Am I reaching outward for validation or inward for clarity? Because when you begin to operate from that place of calm, of focus, of grounded self, you move differently. You stop chasing and you start creating. You stop shouting and you start building. And in a world full of people trying to be loud, the quiet ones become the ones we remember.